Hello friends, users of the internet, my name is Staggertron and I do humbly welcome you back to another episode. Today we'll be discussing the beat-em-up, a genre that sort of took off during the heyday of the arcades and in the early 90s during the 16-bit era, which has sort of since in modern times not necessarily phased out into obscurity, but have definitely toned down, due to, modern graphics and in-depth storylines. But nonetheless, I thought today I would share with you, because it is one of my favorite genres, I wanted to share my favorite Super Nintendo beat-em-ups for you today. Now, this isn't necessarily a top 10 list, I just more or less gathered a bunch of games that I have fond memories of playing as a child, or games that I just think are really great and that people should check out. No game is worse than the other. All these games are, equal opportunists for, games that I think people should check out. So without further ado, let us get to the games. Now, what would a beat-em-up list be without mentioning a Final Fight game? We all know that the original Final Fight was of course an instant arcade beat-em-up classic, but of course when it was ported over to the Super Nintendo, it wasn't without its sacrifices. Final Fight 2 was built from the ground up for the SNES, and for many it was a sequel that we were always waiting for. Series mainstay Hager, as well as two new faces, Mackie and Carlos, go on an excellent globe-trotting adventure, cracking some Magyar skulls and smashing in some faces as they attempt to rescue Guy's fiancée. Kinda makes you wonder where Guy is absent from all these Final Fight games, considering in this one, it's his fiancée that gets kidnapped. But anyways, two-player mode is always a welcome addition. The graphics look great, the sprites are excellent and they're nice and big, and it's visually pleasing to the eye. The sound design, of course, is classic Capcom fare. It's excellent, the sound effects are good, the music is excellent. Now some people might find the game a little bit short, of course, with 6 main levels and 2 bonus stages. But of course, this game has quite a little bit of meat to them, as each level is split up into about 2 or 3 different sections, followed by a boss fight. It's a tried and true classic Final Fight affair, and it's definitely worth your time. So I guess here we have one of these instances where this next game isn't exactly a good game, but it's not necessarily a bad game either, but it's definitely a hidden gem that was found on the Super Nintendo. Legend, I actually didn't discover this game until fairly recently, but if you didn't own a Sega Genesis and you were itching for some Golden Axe inspired gameplay, this was the game you were looking for. Although I feel that the game has not aged well in some aspects, the graphics look fantastic and the backgrounds are varied enough to keep your interest, but at the same time the trade-off is that the game feels really slow and the animations are very clunky, so one may get bored very easily as they're playing through the game. As with all beat-em-ups, it seems like the enemy variety is lacking, and the music doesn't do much to change, its pacing or anything like that. It seems like it's the same type of music that just loops the same sort of tracks, and that with the slow gameplay could leave a boring gameplay experience for some players. But I was definitely surprised with it, and I've played it countless times, and I do enjoy it quite a bit, and I've had a lot of fun with it. There was also an enhanced remake that was made for the PlayStation 1, but it was only available exclusively in the PAL territories. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. A classic beat-em-up in my opinion. Some may also argue that this is the greatest Ninja Turtles game ever made, or arguably the best beat-em-up that was ever made, and there has been no beat-em-up since then that has come close to the caliber of this title. Almost a near perfect arcade port brought to us to the SNES, with all the features of the arcade game intact, plus a couple of exclusive features made to take advantage of the Mode 7 technology found in the Super Nintendo. There's also some exclusive bosses that have been added or changed from the arcade version. The gameplay is real good, feels very smooth, and the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. The visuals are great too, often vibrant, bright, and very colorful. But with all that being said, it's not without its drawbacks. The original arcade version had full 4-player co-op, so you can control each one of the turtles. This version, unfortunately, is only 2 players. There's also a 2-player versus mode, which is okay, I guess, but ultimately you won't be spending a lot of time in this mode. But all in all, during my childhood, I played this game a heck of a lot. Every time my friends would come over after school, this is the game we were always playing, if we weren't playing WWE wrestling games. Also as well, if you have an Xbox 360 or PS3, there was an enhanced reboot made called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time Reshelled. Spider-Man and Venom, Maximum Carnage, a beat-em-up based off the comic book series of the same name. Maximum Carnage follows Spider-Man and Venom as they team up together to take down Venom's offspring symbiote, Carnage. This game has a really great graphic aesthetic,
primarily looks like a comic book, and this game is also told by semi-animated comic book stills taken directly from the book. One noticeable thing about the game that you'll notice is that this game is bone-crushingly difficult, so if you are planning on beating this game, have your spidey senses on high alert because you'll definitely need all hands on deck to beat this one. As you start the game, you'll play as Spider-Man, but as you work through the levels, you'll have some branching paths where you can either stick to play as Spider-Man or you can switch over to Venom. Primarily they play the same, but Spider-Man is more your speed character and Venom is more power, so they're each catering to a different playstyle. One glaring omission from this game is that this game is surprisingly one player, considering that most beat-em-ups around this time at least had two-player support, which in my opinion, while it's a great feature, I definitely think it would make the game a lot easier for that instance. This game also has a really excellent soundtrack. It's produced by Green Jelly, which is a very famous American rock band. Now, of course, due to the Super NES sound chip, we couldn't get full CD music, so they had to sort of make MIDI versions of those songs. And if you were definitely lucky, the cartridges that you had came in a red casing, which looked really awesome and very nostalgic. So this is definitely one of the more solid Spider-Man titles and definitely a beat-em-up worth checking out. Pirates of Darkwater, a beat-em-up based off the animated show of the same name, produced by Hanna-Barbera. So I've never actually watched the show, but interesting fact, the show never actually finished. It ended abruptly after 21 episodes. To me, this game sort of feels like what Streets of Rage would be if it was on the Super Nintendo, in both how the game looks and feels. You choose between 3 different characters. We have the main character, Ren, who's your balanced character, Tula, which is more of your speed, so she has weak attack, and I'm gonna butcher this name, I think his name is Ayaz, or Ayaze, and he's sort of your slow, lumbering tank. So as you traverse the world of Mir, you collect the treasures of Rule to prevent Darkwater from devouring the planet. On this adventure, you'll traverse many unique environments which do keep the game visually interesting and refreshing, although of course with many beat-em-ups the lack of any variety seems to be expected, but they do try to spice things up by using minor mode 7 usage to make enemies jump from the foreground to the background, which is kind of cool. Also, some of the boss battles are really neat. 2-player mode is always a welcome addition and sort of expected at this point with most beat-em-ups, but of course most licensed property games, they aren't exactly that good, so this is definitely one of the more hidden gems for the Super Nintendo, and it's a beat-em-up worth checking out. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's Morphin time, guys. Now this game is fantastic and very nostalgic to me because as growing up as I was a kid, I was a huge Power Rangers fan. This game is loosely based off the first season of the TV show, and the first thing you're going to notice is this game has a lot of similarities to a game called Ninja Warriors, as both games were developed by the same team. So the gameplay of this game varies a little bit different than your standard beat-em-up, because this game is played on a 2D plane with no 3D movement. So unlike games like Final Fight where you can sort of move around the whole area, this game you can only move left to right, and I think it's because of this reason the developers decided to primarily stick to a single player game, as I feel that 2 players would sort of make this a little bit crowded with too many people on screen. Now there is a 2-player mode, but you have to unlock it via password after you beat the game, and it's just a simple versus mode that I think you won't spend a lot of time into. All the original Rangers are accounted for here, and before each stage you get to pick which Ranger you want to play as. Each stage is split into 2 specific parts. The first part you play in civilian form, where each Ranger has their own combo moves to take down various Putty Patrol enemies. And then automatically you will switch to your Ranger form, which then you become a much more powered up version of yourself, and each Ranger has their own unique weapon, as well as a screen clearing bomb technique, which doesn't really do anything too differently, but it looks like they're based off specific elements based on the art style. Like Trini's has lightning, Jason's is fire, Zack's is earth, etc, etc. Now the one weird design choice in this game is that each Ranger looks the same. So when they switch into the Rangers forms, they all look like the Red Ranger. So I don't know if it was, due to graphical power of the Super Nintendo that it was lacking, or if the developers were just lazy and decided, oh, let's take the Red Ranger sprite and just use it for all the rest of the Rangers. Now, later on in the game, you do get to play as the Megazord, which is really awesome, but of course the Megazord controls do feel clunky, and the Megazord sort of feels kind of rusted, and the mechanics are very slow. This game is very short, very sweet, but it's definitely worth your time. The Ninja Warriors, or as it's known in Japan, the Ninja Warriors again. I feel that this beat-em-up is actually underrated and doesn't get a lot of talk time, or not a lot of people know about it. I know recently it's starting to shed a little light, but I still feel that it's underrated. This is one beat-em-up that I truly love. I remember when I was younger, I'd always go to my local convenience store down the road, and this was the game that I would always rent. Never could beat it when I was a kid, but I would always rent it, I always have a good time with it. So in this game you'll notice that it sounds and looks very similar to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, as again, it was made by the same developer, but again, it feels very different at the same time. You choose from 3 distinct different characters. We have Ninja, who is slow and strong, Kunoichi, who is more of the balanced and Kawatachi, who is your speed character. And I mean, they're cyborg ninjas, how awesome is that? They each have their own unique moveset to cater to different playstyles. Players also have access to a screen clearing bomb technique, which constantly refills your meter as long as you're defeating enemies and not getting hit. As soon as you get knocked down, the meter disappears and it adds a layer of strategy to the game. So the game might be considered a little bit short. It's 8 levels, but the difficulty definitely ramps up fairly quickly, but it's not punishing at all by any means. The soundtrack is fantastic, and I think this is a soundtrack that I could listen to time and time again and just enjoy the music. And also, this is one of the games that I could easily come back to time and time again and not get bored no matter how many times I play it. You know, so a game like Mega Man X, I could always go back and play that one. I feel like this is the beat 'em up that I could always come back to and have a good time and not get bored. So definitely worth it.
Alright, so there it is. My favorite Super NES beat 'em up games. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Now of course not all the beat 'em up games made the list because there's a plethora of those type of games on the system, so I feel like if I were to cover each and every one of them, this video would literally take forever. If you have any recommendations or if you want to share your favorite Super NES beat 'em ups, definitely feel free to leave a comment down below here. As well, just let me leave a positive or negative comment. Let me know how I did, because any constructive criticism definitely helps me improve my content. So with that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video. Take care.